Alrighty, people, we need to talk about the Game Awards 2024 and Nintendo's presence there. Or I guess I should say their absence. I want to talk about the games that were announced, the games that weren't announced, and also the games that were announced that I think we could safely say will probably come to Nintendo's future platform, the Switch 2. Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you all enjoyed the Game Awards last night. I'll have another video over on It's Amiibo going over like more in-depth thoughts on my favorite announcements. But today I want to talk about Nintendo's role in the show and where I think a lot of these games may end up being on the Nintendo Switch. There was one thing. We got one tidbit from Nintendo itself. They had a trailer where they were showing, I think, the nominees. So, like, they showed Balatro and stuff in that trailer. They had a little quote at the end of it that said, "Thank you for joining us now and into the future." This, I think, is a very clear, overt, like, hey, we're listening. We know you're waiting. You know, our presence here is very subdued, but we want you to know we're, cooking. We have a future. We do have a future, guys. So yeah, I do want to mention that because I do think that is an overt tease of the Nintendo Switch 2, obviously. They don't really talk about their future very often, at least not in like adverts. We know it's coming and they know we know it's coming. So it was nice of them to at least say that in that trailer. I will say I think the lack of a first party Nintendo thing being here, be that Metroid Prime, maybe be that a Bravely game that they would publish, it's not that surprising because Metroid Prime 4, they're probably saving for whatever the next big Switch 2 presentation is, and Bravely, the same thing might be true for that. I believe the director of the Bravely series, or the producer, or someone over at Square Enix had said that we should expect Bravely news in 2024. I'm going to believe that he thought the Switch 2 would also be announced this year, to be honest. So I think we will probably see a new Bravely thing in the Switch 2 presentation. But yeah, I'm not that surprised that Metroid wasn't there. I was hopeful, right? I talked about it in videos over the past couple weeks. I was hopeful that Metroid Prime would be there. And I do still stand by that, like, showing Metroid Prime 4 at the Game Awards just makes sense. But alas, we will have to wait a few more weeks, it seems, until maybe late January or early February to see more of that game and see more from Nintendo as we move into the future with them. But it's not too bad. We only have a couple more weeks, and I think the Game Awards outside of Nintendo's absence was actually still really good. I think there was a lot of very exciting announcements, so that's what I want to talk about today. Starting off with what was announced for Switch. Now, by my count, there were 4 games announced for Switch, which I think actually makes us technically better than last year. I'm not quite sure how many games were announced at 2023 show, but at the very least, there are 3, I would say, like, interesting games, and then 1 kind of whatever game. So the whatever game is this game called Catly. I have no idea what this is. It seems to be a mobile game, but also it is on Switch, so cat game. I don't know. I have no thoughts on this, but that was announced for Switch. We had Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, which was just briefly teased. We just got like a CGI trailer of Shadow getting into a car. Puro had leaked this the day before the Game Awards, and I almost made a video about it. I'm glad I didn't. This was a pretty nothing tease, but we do know we're getting another Sonic Racing game on the Switch, and it being Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, I think is actually pretty exciting because that implies crossovers, like the Sonic Racing game on Xbox 360 and like Wii U and all that. So I think we'll probably see some Yakuza characters in here, maybe some Persona in this would be really cool. And yeah, I mean, I think Team Sonic Racing was definitely a disappointment for a lot of people, and I hope that this is more like the original racing game that we had before, and a little bit closer to that in quality. Bandai Namco announced a game called Shadow Labyrinth for the Nintendo Switch. This is releasing next year. It's already up for pre-order. I think it's $30. It does have a physical release. This is a Pac-Man game. If you haven't seen that show on Amazon, Secret Level, they did a Pac-Man episode, and this is clearly, they're connected, right? So this is a Metroidvania where you play as this girl, I'm pretty sure, and you have a Pac-Man orb following you, and you, like, have Pac-Man attacks and stuff. It actually looks really cool. I'm very curious about this game. Out of every game announced, I'm like, I just want to see more of this, and I want to, like, see reviews. I want to see if this really has the sauce to be a great Metroidvania, but it looks solid. I gotta be honest. I really never thought I would say that a Pac-Man Metroidvania looks pretty good, but this does look solid. And then the final game confirmed for Nintendo Switch, like I said, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the only other thing announced here for Switch, specifically, was Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. This is from the developers of the Blasphemous games, if you have not seen these, but they're working with Koei Tecmo on a new Ninja Gaiden game called Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, which looks absolutely incredible. This is like the first new Ninja Gaiden game in like a decade and a half, I'm pretty sure. So that's really exciting. And for them to go back and make a 2D Ninja Gaiden game, but also to team up with the devs of Blasphemous, which, I mean, those 2 games are incredible. This is probably the most exciting Nintendo announcements in the show. It is, of course, coming to other platforms, but yeah, this looks really solid. And, Ninja Gaiden, Shadow Labyrinth, and Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, hey, it ain't much, but it's not the end of the world, right? There was a lot of other exciting announcements in this showcase, though, and I do want to talk about those because while maybe for Switch it was a light show, I think this was secretly a fantastic show for the Switch too. I'm not going to go over literally everything here, but I have compiled a list of what I would say are like the most exciting announcements that were in the showcase and the most exciting games. I might miss a couple things here, but the biggest things that I do think will actually come to Switch too. The first of which is Elden Ring Night Rain. This is a new co-op PvE focused Elden Ring game. It is a standalone game. It's not a DLC. From Software, we don't know what extent they'll be supporting the Switch 2. However, this game is coming to PS4. This is a 2025 From Software new game, not a DLC, that is coming to the PS4 and Xbox One. I would be shocked if this game does not release on the Switch 2. It will definitely be weird if they don't get Elden Ring, like the base game, on there first, but either way, considering this is a PS4 game, I think From Software will likely have no issue getting Elden Ring Night Rain running on the Switch 2, and I think this is something we will probably see day and date on that console. We don't know the exact release date, they just said 2025, but considering this is a PS4 title, I really do think we'll see this on Switch 2. Capcom announced 2 games here, one of which I'm like positive will come to Nintendo. The other one is a little iffier. We'll have to see how Capcom really supports it as well, but Okami 2 was announced, or a sequel to Okami was announced, with Hideki Kamiya returning as the director. I was looking at his Wikipedia. I think this is the first time he's ever directed a sequel to one of his own games, which is really cool, actually. Cool to see him come back and work with Capcom on this game. Okami originally was like, it's a PS2 game, right? I think most people associate it with PS2. I don't think it was until the Wii version that it came to a Nintendo platformer, and we also had Okami then on DS, but out of all of Capcom's franchises, that's not like Ace Attorney or Mega Man, I feel like Okami like just really fits Nintendo. This is very early. Kamiya just left Platinum last year, so this is going to be probably 4 years away at the earliest, I would honestly assume. So I would be absolutely flabbergasted if this was not a Switch 2 game, and that's really exciting. Okami 2 is a super big deal, and that was one of the final things they announced because it was such a big deal that he's back working with Capcom on this game in his new studio, Clovers. So that's one that I think will probably be there, as well as Onimusha Way of the Sword. Now, this one I'm a little less confident in. This is a 2026 game, though, and like I said, if Capcom is supporting Nintendo all in, right? If they get the re-engine working all good on the Switch 2, you would probably see Onimusha come over as well. Maybe this is one that maybe wouldn't be day and date or something. Maybe it takes a little time to get a port going. It really depends on what that first year of Switch looks like, right? Like when we see this thing released in, let's say May, if it releases in May or June, we'll have to wait and see what those first 6 months are like. How does the first party support line up? Are we getting Elden Ring 1 on the Switch at that point? Because if so, then we'll probably get Elden Ring Night Rain. Same thing here. If we get Monster Hunter Wilds early on the Switch 2, you can probably expect Onimusha and like Resident Evil 9 and stuff to come over as well. And I will say, my most anticipated announcement of the night was definitely Onimusha Way of the Sword. I love the original Onimusha, and this is interesting because it seems to be their Souls game. Capcom doesn't have a Souls game, and before, Onimusha was a Resident Evil clone, essentially. So now, I think it's going to be a Souls game, which we'll have to wait and see how that turns out as well. I'll be curious to see. Maybe it won't work out too well, but I think an Onimusha Souls-like actually makes sense. And if they're going to do a Souls-like, it's cool to bring back that name at the very least. So that is one I definitely think we could see on the Switch 2. Another one that I'm very, very confident in is Split Fiction from Hazelight. These are the developers of It Takes Two. It Takes Two sold like 20 million copies. I'm not sure how many it sold on Switch. It did come to Switch after the PlayStation and Xbox versions, but this is a co-op game. Nintendo and co-op kind of go hand in hand with the Joy-Con, right? So I think Split Fiction is another one that you will almost certainly see very early on the Switch 2. This is releasing in March, though, so it would have to be a late port because of that, unless we somehow get the Switch 2 before March 6th. But yeah, Split Fiction, very excited for that. It Takes Two, Game of the Year 2021, right? So I think that's one. EA wants that game on as many platforms as possible if it has the sales potential of It Takes Two, and it probably will. So I think Split Fiction is one you could see there. Here's two that I'm not sure about. However, I do feel like, depending on the power of the Switch 2 and all that, I think these are two that you could probably expect to see. Maybe not day and date, certainly, but maybe you see a late port or something. The first of which is Witcher 4. So Witcher 4 was announced here. No date, obviously. This is a long, long ways off. And this is also going to be a very graphically intensive game. And, we don't exactly know the Switch 2 specs, right? So we'll have to wait and see. But Witcher 3 was on Switch, and CD Projekt Red did make an effort to port that there. So I do think, at the very least, I should mention Witcher 4. I think this is something that, it would certainly will not be a day and date thing, right? Like, this will be a late port, but I did want to mention it because I think it's possible that Witcher 4 is something. I saw Nintendo Life also, like, made an article saying, like, oh, Witcher 4 announced. It's a little funny because, like, realistically, This is probably the least likely game I've talked about so far to come to Switch 2, but they did put Witcher 3 on Switch, so I have to mention it. Same thing with Outer Worlds 2. Outer Worlds is on Nintendo Switch. I'm not sure how that port was actually. I think it was rough. I want to say I remember people saying it wasn't the best port in the world, but Outer Worlds 2 was slated for late 2025, or actually just 2025, which means that usually means late 2025. The Switch 2 will likely be out then, and it's coming to PS5 and everything else on the same day, right? This is a Microsoft first-party game developed by Obsidian, but it is coming to PlayStation day and date with the Xbox version and PC version, so I think this is one we might see on Switch 2 next holiday, honestly. Here's a fun one that I'm definitely confident will come to Switch. Stage Fright. We don't know too much about this, but this is the new IP from the Overcooked devs. Overcooked, of course, being... I mean, it's huge on Switch. It's huge on everything, but Overcooked, I have to imagine Overcooked's main platform for sales was Switch, so they would probably want to put the new IP, Stage Fright, on the Switch 2. I'd be shocked if they didn't. Similarly, I'm very confident that Double Dragon Revive will come over. This is a new game from Arc System Works. This is releasing, I think... This one has a date. I think it's October 23rd, 2025, I want to say. This is a new Double Dragon game from Arc System Works. I was surprised, frankly, that this wasn't coming to the base Switch. Double Dragon has so many games on Switch, and I have to assume they sell pretty good on Switch. So, Double Dragon Revive, probably coming to Switch too. And then finally, Ryu Ga Gotoku, the Yakuza studio, and Sega announced 2 new games here. Virtua Fighter, new Virtua Fighter, reboot, whatever it is. We don't have a date for it or anything. As well as Project Century, which seems to be a Yakuza game set in 1915 Japan, which looks absolutely fantastic. I really, really am excited for this game. Neither of these have dates, and neither of them really have proper titles, so they're a ways off. I think you probably get one of them in 2025, maybe Project Century, since we actually saw, like, proper, we saw a pretty decent amount of it, I would say. So I think that's probably first. Maybe that's a late 2025 thing, and then Virtua Fighter is 2026. With Yakuza Kiwami coming to Switch, and since I think it's pretty likely we'll see a lot of the other Yakuza games come to Switch over the coming years, you have to imagine, I'm not sure if it'll happen like this soon, but you have to imagine at a certain point we get to it where the RGG games are releasing day and date on PlayStation, Xbox, PC, Switch. They want to know everything, right? So maybe not day and date for Project Century and Virtua Fighter, but I do think these will come eventually because we're getting Yakuza on Switch now. I think they regret it, right? I think they regret not being on Switch as early as they could have been. So now they're kind of playing makeup. They're going to have to catch up on all the games they've released, which is so many over the past decade. And then eventually we'll get to Project Century and Virtua Fighter. I mean, they might go in day and date though. I mean, that's very possible. And yeah, I think if you're a Nintendo fan, maybe you don't play on PlayStation, maybe you don't play on Xbox, maybe you don't have a PC, that kind of thing. I understand that watching the Game Awards might be frustrating because Nintendo is always very quiet. I think you should turn that frustration into excitement for what could be. I think some people might watch this video and be like, oh, he's port begging or whatever, but I'm just having a conversation. I think it's very possible that a lot of the games we saw tonight, like Borderlands 4, I didn't even mention, every Borderlands game is on Switch. Makes sense that Borderlands 4 would be on Switch too. I think you can look at this showcase and be like, wow, there was a lot of games that actually, they make a lot of sense to come to Switch too. So while I understand like frustration with Nintendo for not showing Metroid Prime 4 or something, on the other hand, it's like there were so many great games announced that even if they weren't for the current Switch, they're probably still coming to Switch 2, and we will be able to play them on a Nintendo platform in the future. And yeah, like I said at the top, that little ad where they say, thank you for joining us now and into the future, that is such an overt tease. Like, they know, like I'm 99% sure that Nintendo understands that a lot of Nintendo fans watch the Game Awards and probably are lit down when we have situations like this where so many great games are announced and they're not announced for Nintendo platforms. But I think this won't be an issue in 3 years, right? Like I think we will get to the Game Awards 2027 and almost every third-party game will probably be on Switch too. Especially when we're seeing freaking Elden Ring Night Rain or whatever it's called. That's coming to PS4. A lot of Japanese developers have still not moved on from the PS4. So I really would be shocked if they don't bring their games to the Switch too, right? I don't know, man. I think it was a great showcase. I think there was a lot of exciting games, and I think if you're a Nintendo fan, yeah, maybe it comes off as a little port beggy, but I think there's a good chance a lot of the stuff comes over. And I mean, if we're talking, just imagine a console with the third-party output from Capcom and Square Enix that PlayStation gets, but with the first-party output that Nintendo has. I mean, that's going to be an all-time console, right? Like that's going to be something absolutely special. And closing thought: if you were disappointed watching this showcase, okay, that's fair, I guess. Just wait. We only have a couple weeks. We should be getting the Switch 2 reveal at absolute most, within 3 months. Probably earlier than that. Probably in January. So yeah, maybe this showcase wasn't for you. Maybe it wasn't too Nintendo heavy, but we will have our Switch 2 event or some sort of Nintendo Direct in probably 7 or 8 weeks or so, somewhere in that range. 2 months, I would say. That gets us to mid-February. So we don't have too long to wait, and I think it's fun to speculate the possibility when it comes to these third parties on Switch 2. So that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know your thoughts on the Game Awards 2024 down in the comments below. What was your favorite announcement, and which of these games do you think are a lock for the Switch 2? Like I said, it'll depend on those first couple of months of Switch 2 support. Is Capcom there? Is Square Enix there? Is CD Projekt Red there? Right? Like, do we get Cyberpunk 2077 on Switch 2? And if that's the case, then yeah, we'll get Witcher 4. But for me, like the dead locks, like 100%, Okami 2, absolutely happening. Split Fiction from Hazelight, absolutely happening. Stage Fright from the Overcooked devs, Double Dragon Revive, the RGG games, like I think those are all basically locks at some point. From Software and Elden Ring, I think that's pretty likely, but I'm not going to say it's a lock. Onimusha, we'll see once again. And then Outer Worlds 2, maybe. Probably because everything's on Xbox, right? They want to really have their games on every platform known to man. So I think that's likely. So yeah, I think it was a very exciting showcase, even if it wasn't, games announced for Nintendo. These will become Nintendo games in the future. But like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo topics and discussions basically each and every day. Follow me on Twitter at BoTalksGames. Check out It's a Bebo for more Game Awards thoughts. That'll be linked down below. And until next time, folks, peace.